Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bielatich-Davis, and we get together here on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. You know, North America is a big continent, and we have Orthodox people all over it. And we're all worshiping in different jurisdictions, sometimes even in different languages. And the thing is, we don't really know each other very well. And I find, you know, people often only know people in their own jurisdiction, right? Like if you're in a Greek church, you know maybe some of the other Greek parishes around, or if you're in the Antiochian church or the Russian church, you know kind of your crowd. But we don't all know each other. We're not always great about pan-Orthodox stuff. Even if you know everybody in your city, you're not going to know people in the next state and then the next state, right? So I think it's a wonderful thing to sort of build Orthodox unity, you know, not worrying so much about whose bishop is whose and all of that, but just really, do we know one another? Do we care about one another? So let's get to know each other, even across the distance a little bit. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm glad that you're joining us. And let's see, we have tonight, Simon and Mike are both joining us as well. Mike is producing this show, and Simon's here making sure that you can see us on YouTube. We're streaming on YouTube and on the Ancient Faith app, on ancientfaith.com, on Facebook Live. We are all over the place. And then after the show, and it's important if you miss one, you'll want to know that you can always get past episodes. You just go on the app or at ancientfaith.com to see some past podcast episodes, or if you want to see the video, you can go to YouTube to the Ancient Faith Ministries channel. So, all right, that's where we are. That's who we are. Let's get moving then. So I'm still announcing my great excitement at my book that is coming out after Pascha. In fact, I'm going to be gone. We won't have a show for Palm Sunday or Pascha because, you know, we've got the bridegroom services, we got Pascha, there's a lot going on. But when we get back, it's quite possible that my new book will be out. So that's very exciting. It's called The Art of Myrrh Bearing. So you can watch for that on the Ancient Faith store. All right. Tonight's guest, I'm very excited to introduce. I enjoy him very much. His name is Judge Nicholas Ayoub. Now, you may remember a friend of mine, Elizabeth Ayoub, was on the show not too long ago, just a couple months ago. And I know Elizabeth through Yes. Well, Nick is her husband, and they are an adorable couple. They're really fun. They have really good energy about them. And Nick came out for the Yes conference in November, so you got to see him right here in Austin. And he and Elizabeth have a daughter named Josephine, and she's 9. So they're great. But so Nick is really interesting. As I mentioned, he's a judge, right? Like, how often do we have judges on the show? That's so cool. He was appointed by Michigan Governor Rick Snyder to the 61st District Court. He serves Kent County, Michigan on the District Court bench. And prior to his appointment to the judicial office, he was an appellate litigator in private practice, primarily serving the insurance agency. So that's what he's been doing. But he's also a semi-professional musician, which is really cool. He performs in piano bars in West Michigan as a solo artist and with his pop jazz trio. So we are going to hear all about it. He does all kinds of really cool stuff. I think you're going to like him very much. And of course, I should say, he also devotes his musical talents to the church. He's the Protopsalti at his parish, which is St. Nicholas Antiochian Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so he chants there. And I had the blessing of getting to hear him chant a bit here in Austin as well. And he's awesome. He's so good. I bet you're really good with the jazz trio too. So I might have to come up to Michigan to see that. But all right, without any further ado, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Elisa, for having me for that sweet introduction. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is great. And when you came out and I got to meet you, I was like, Elizabeth, I'm going to have your husband on the show, period, because that's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's so cool to be a semi-professional musician and a district court judge. I don't think I know any of those. That's great.
It keeps you really balanced. I'll say that much, because
I bet it does.
The days go one way and the evenings go a different way. So
that's right. Yeah, it must be so serious. The day in the life of a district court judge. It's a lot of serious decisions all day long.
You know, and I like to think we try to bring a little bit of the lightness and joy in making music to the courtroom, and try and bring that to some folks that don't always have a joy, or generally not at the courthouse for a joyous experience. So try to do that as well. Try to mesh the two.
That's beautiful. That's very beautiful. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through, just sort of that idea of, where does orthodoxy fit into all these? It's one of those things that people worry about, is how does orthodoxy fit into my job, my vocation, And so that's maybe a really interesting question, I think, with you. But all right, well, let's start at the beginning, though. Before we get ahead of ourselves, where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Peoria, Illinois. My father was immigrated from Lebanon in the early 70s. His family told him that if he didn't leave Lebanon, he was going to probably be dead in a couple of years. He was quite he spoke his mind and always did through his entire life. Spoke the truth in love, certainly, but sometimes the truth puts you in danger. And so he was able to come to the United States as a student. And he met my mom in Peoria, and he ended up in Peoria, of all places. And it's one of those things, somebody in the village knows somebody else. Right. He was from the small village of Ejdeide Marjayun, which is primarily, at least at the time, an Orthodox village, still to this day is a primarily Christian village, with a strong Orthodox presence. And so he wound up at the church in Peoria, Illinois, which was the Greek church, All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Peoria, Illinois. And that is where my mom was born and raised. And her family came from a village that is probably about 30 or 40 miles away from my dad's village. But of course, they came around the turn of the century from a town called Rishaya. And they immigrated to Peoria, Illinois. A lot of folks came from that area to central Illinois. A lot of them went to Spring Valley, Illinois first. And there's an Antiochian church in Spring Valley, a very, very old church. And a lot of the Antiochians are familiar with the early translation from Father Seraphim Nasser. He was the priest there in Spring Valley, Illinois. And so that really one of the earliest translations of many of the divine services come out of Spring Valley, Illinois. So all these folks kind of know each other. It's fun to see how everybody ends up from the old country and then ends up kind of in the same place. So that's that on my mom's side. Peoria, Illinois is where it's at.
Well, it's an amazing thing, though. I mean, you think of how small Lebanon is, right? And the United States is so big. You would think, I mean, if it weren't for orthodoxy, truly, it's entirely possible that, people would have immigrated here and just never, ever run into anybody from their part of the world, right? But instead, it's always people gathering and taking care of each other and building churches. And it's just, it's really neat. That's very cool.
Yeah.
So does your mom still have family in Lebanon, or did everybody come over?
It's very, very distant on my mom's side.
Okay.
My dad's family, there's still family in Lebanon, close family in Lebanon.
I was going to say, I would guess that a lot of his immediate family is still in Lebanon, right? Or some of his immediate family.
He was the only one of his immediate family that immigrated.
Okay. Wow. Wow. All right. So then the two of them meet in Peoria. So he just kind of showed up in church, and they're in a Greek church, but they're both Lebanese,
which is a beautiful thing, and it's a different sensibility for somebody that grew up in Lebanon. It was just, and in Lebanon, here in America, we use the term Antiochian Orthodox Church, but usually in the Middle East, you'll see it's the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, right?
Yep.
So that was an easy, there's no question about what jurisdiction, or I just find the Greek Orthodox Church,
absolutely.
Which, at that time, and certainly before, when my mom's family immigrated, I'll try and say this without being sensitive. The Greek, of course, in those days, that was the glue, right? And so, unlike today, when my family in the teens and 20s, were there at the Greek Orthodox Church, they were different, right? They were Lebanese, and it didn't always, they weren't always well received.
Okay.
And so a good chunk of my extended family ended up leaving the church, unfortunately.
Okay.
My grandmother, though, was a stalwart. And my brother and I are very, very proud of that. That she, said, I don't care. I'm here for the church. If somebody doesn't
That's
treat
right.
me the best, I don't care. If it's in Greek, I don't care. I'm here. This is the church. This is where God is. Um, and that's stuck
Wow.
with us.
God
Um,
bless her. Yeah. Well, it's like Saint
yeah,
Nectarius, right? I mean, it's like we have a lot of saints like that where you have to have the humility to sometimes be okay with not everybody loving you and treating you maybe the way you deserve, but you
right,
show up because this is where
right,
God is. Yeah. I love
right.
that. I think that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
and then
Wow.
the other half of the story is where we've come. So we left Peoria when I was very young, and so my extended family is still there, and we got back once in a while, but not a whole lot. Um, but when my grandmother passed, 15 years ago, we were back at All Saints, and my oh my, how it is different to hear the Lord's Prayer in so many languages, and I had the joy and pleasure to chant there. And of course, I chanted in English, but I also chanted in Arabic, and it was embraced. And to think, here we are, and in fact, someone read the epistle in Arabic, in English, in Greek, and it
Oh,
was just
wow.
such a melting pot of a parish. And you say, wow, how far we've come, and it's a beautiful thing.
It is
Yeah,
beautiful. That is wonderful. That's wonderful. And I think simultaneously, America is also friendlier to us now, right? I feel like when people
absolutely.
were always like, how come they weren't like missionaries when they got, it's like, well, people weren't super welcoming in general, right? And it's just, we're
Right.
a much friendlier universe now, I think, in
Yeah.
some ways, certainly in terms of different cultures trying to come together. And so, well, thank God.
Right.
That's wonderful. How beautiful to have
Yeah.
been able to see all saints come to that maturity in that same way. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
We
all
we
right,
we grow together just like we try and grow as humans. I thought that was a beautiful
that's right.
example of that.
Saved
Yeah.
in community. You've got to bring everybody with you.
Right.
but
Right.
so okay, so you left Peoria though as a little kid. So where did you
Mhm.
grow up? Where was the majority of your youth?
So we ended up a couple different places. My dad was a mechanical
Hmm.
engineer, and so this is early '80s with the farm crisis and Caterpillars is Peoria, Illinois, and you
Yeah.
can imagine uh,
Okay.
Caterpillar took a big hit during that period of time. So we had to move around a couple different places, and Caterpillar and then John Deere in Waterloo, Iowa. But we ended up here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, when I was about 7 or 8. Um, and again, for my dad's job, he ended up working at a furniture company here as a mechanical engineer, and then ended up opening his own business. But we found home here in Grand Rapids, and really the first time that we have two Antiochian churches in Grand Rapids, one Greek church. Um, and so that was the first time we kind of ended up in an Antiochian church. Um, and which was, we back in the '80s, certainly much more homogenous than it is today.
Sure.
Still Arabic speakers. We have very few Arabic speakers in our parishes here in Grand
Yeah.
Rapids. But certainly our home was there in at St. Nicholas in Grand
So
Rapids,
I'm
Michigan.
I'm curious. So your family had this experience of being kind of the outsiders in a Greek parish for so long, and then moved to other Greek parishes, and even in a super friendly parish, if it's mostly Greek and you're not Greek, you're there and you're not there,
Sure.
right? But
Right.
if you're so then you come now to an Antiochian church and everyone's speaking Arabic. Were you like, did you find yourself really sensitive to the experience of people who weren't understanding the Arabic? Or did you guys just jump right in and it was just super awesome to be around people who were also Lebanese or Syrian or wherever they were from?
Yeah. No, and our parish. primarily, I'd say, kind of my family's demographic, where, well, I'm a first generation on my dad's side. I'm second generation on my mom's side. My mom didn't speak Arabic, and
Right.
we never spoke Arabic, and never learned it at the home. Never learned it in the home. Different time, right? My father's worrying about assimilating, so
Yes.
which is unfortunate. I wish
Yeah.
that I did learn it. But our parish was much like that, where there was a
Okay.
cultural connection, but as far as language and too much of a tie, that wasn't there. And it was always a very welcoming parish. And we had, I think we were unique, and we had a number of early converts, before kind of the 1985
Right.
point in time when you have the influx of
Right.
converts. We had
The
converts
great
before that.
influx. Yeah, for some of
Yeah.
our listeners, we're talking about sort of the evangelical Orthodox Church and these big Protestant movements that came. And it was Metropolitan Philip, I think,
Hmm.
who invited them in, and it was just a huge
Yeah.
influx of converts, and it really changes the landscape of Antiochian Orthodox
Mhm.
churches in America. But even before that, though, you're already welcoming in converts, and that maybe was good. Maybe that's God warming everybody up to get ready, because here it
Yeah.
comes. It's going to just be
Right.
a wave, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, both my parents very close to their heart, especially my father, though, having been an immigrant and immigrated, later in life, or, in his 20s. That was always important, to make sure that he made sure everyone else felt that they were part of the family, even though, they may not have an accent, or they may have blonde hair and blue eyes, right? You're
Yeah.
part of this family. That was always very, very important to him. Um, and on and very important for my mother was uh, the notion of a pan-Orthodox notion. So in Grand Rapids, again, I hate to sound like I'm telling you how great we are in Grand Rapids, but even in those days, in the early '80s, we had a very, very strong pan-Orthodox commitment, and so we all went to each other's churches. We did a vacation Bible school that included all of the Orthodox churches. We went to each other's parties, and we were one big family. And my mom thought that was so important. My mom's heart, uh, you know, I like to think her heart thought in the Greek, because she grew up. She grew up in the Greek parish. She grew up
Yeah.
knowing the Byzantine melodies, and singing in the choir. And so it was. She missed a little bit when we went to the Antiochian, and she didn't have the Greek.
Yeah.
So, her solution was, let's make sure we have a strong Pan-Orthodox community, and we did, and we continue to.
That's beautiful. That's really nice. Well, and it is interesting, right? Because it's like those language things, they don't necessarily line up with your culture. It really lines up with what you knew when you were young and what you're used
Right.
to. And there are even a lot of places in the Middle East that are actually Greek in the church. They're singing in Greek and things are happening in Greek. And as you said, they're all called Greek Orthodox, whatever they are, just you have sort of the Latin Catholic and the Greek Orthodox. And
Right.
but it's really what you're used to. Right. It's just,
Right.
it's like kind of the rhythms of your heart. What should the chanting sound like? So
Right.
I'm always, I do get that. And I think a lot of times, as converts, we can get very, I don't know, kind of defensive or upset, like, oh, they won't sing in English for us. But it's really beautiful, really, to get used to all of them, because they're just, each language is so beautiful, and the more you spend time in it, the more it starts to really attach to you, and the more you start to love it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
all right, so there you are in this beautiful, and you're still in the same parish, right? Like, you've just stayed there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So clearly you like it. Just clearly you're a fan of
I
St.
do.
Nicholas.
Yes.
That
It's
is
home.
great. That is great. So did you go to camp and stuff like that when you were growing up? Were you at like Antiochian Village or somewhere?
Yeah. So I went as a young boy. It was probably 8 or 9, which was probably a little young. But I was probably the worst camper that ever went to the Antiochian village. Certainly the
Wow.
most homesick camper. I cried the entire time.
Oh,
And for those that know the Antiochian village, Father John Namey was there, and the camp director, and he's a your listeners who know him will know him. He was a very special priest, and I spent half of the time riding around with him in a golf cart. And he told his friends that were in Grand Rapids, uh, we got this camper, little Nick Ayoub. I don't know what's the matter with the kid. I never seen a kid cry like that, but I was just so homesick. It's and I laugh about it now, but it's kind of an unfortunate thing, because then I never went back. My high
yeah.
school years, I never went back and didn't have that camp experience that so many of the young people have had, and I wish that I had that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
it
that's
is
my
neat.
camp
But
story.
but who knows? Maybe you would have been homesick year after year, right? I mean,
Who knows, right?
it seems like you had really sweet parents. I can see how that would happen, that it's nice. So did you have siblings? I feel like you mentioned
I
a
have,
brother, right?
yeah,
What do you
I
have?
have one brother. I have
Okay.
one brother. He's a year and a half younger than I am. And I if I can put a plug in, I think he'd be a great guest on your show.
Yeah. Oh, excellent.
He is he is much smarter, much deeper, much better looking than I am. He and much more interesting. He's a professional musician, and he's played
Oh,
with a number
cool.
of big name touring groups, and his current gig is on the Kelly Clarkson daytime show on her band,
Oh,
and
wow.
then he's the bass player on American Idol, and then a number of groups he travels with. So he's
No
a real rock
way.
star.
Oh, that's so cool. That's
Yeah.
very cool. All right. Well, you're going to have to send me his email address, please, at the end of the show, because I would love to invite him on the show. That sounds great. But so does music run in your family? You're both musicians. Are your parents musical?
My mom was musical. She was a singer. My dad liked music, but my brother and I will tell you he was pretty tone deaf. But my brother and I caught the bug, and the two of us made music together, and still make music together when we can. And so yeah, that was always important to us. We took piano lessons as kids, and then we found pop music and found jazz, and then you kind of have you study music as a kid, and then you think it's maybe not anything that you would do, but then you find other music, and all of a sudden you have this second birth of musicality, and you start to teach yourself. But that's kind of what we ended up doing. So neither of us really studied classical music. We did piano lessons, but we found pop music and learned to make our own.
Oh, that's neat. That's really cool. But yeah, there is something about that. It's actually not unrelated to camp in a sense, because the great thing about camp when you're not super homesick is that it's this opportunity to explore the faith without your family, right? And it's sort of like that with
Mm-hmm.
music too there, right? Like as you guys got older and you're at an age where there's, music that your peers are listening to and music at school in a sense, you start picking up music that maybe your mom wouldn't have paid for lessons to go
Right.
to go learn that
Right.
music, and now that's yours, and it's much more exciting. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Did you and your brother ever have like bands together or play together?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We had a number of bands together, and even after college, I mean, we really still do have a band, and when he's in town, then we'll play, and I'll play with the other guys if he's not there. So it's still our it's still our band that
that's
we
neat.
that we have when we can. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So he can come back. He's allowed to just come in and out because
Oh yeah.
he's hit the big time. So there.
Yeah. Joe's in town, then everyone else has to step aside.
That's beautiful. That's just fantastic. All right. So as you're growing up, then you guys are interested in music together. What other kinds of stuff did you do?
Mhm.
Were you chanting in church as a young man too?
A little bit. We I always was so I always sang in the choir at St. Nicholas, and we're kind of typical Antiochian church. We've got for the divine liturgy, we have like a four-part Western or Russian style choir, and then for the other services, usually a couple of chanters
Mm-hmm.
Byzantine chant. And we had some chanters growing up. There was a chanter at the Greek church who is my dear friend to this day. And as a kid, I remember in particular, whenever we were at the Greek church, Holy Trinity, and I heard my friend Terry chant in Greek and English, that spoke to me. That was different. Somehow, I always describe it as, you can look at a Western painting and, okay, it's beautiful. You see beauty, but then you see, a true icon, and there's something transcendent there. And that's all how I always felt about hearing Terry chant. So, and so I was always interested and certainly always drawn to it.
Oh, we're losing you for a second here now. Try again. Oh, no, we can't hear you, but we're going to go for a quick break, and I'm sure we'll get it straightened out by the time we're back. We'll be back in just a few minutes on Everyday Orthodox with Judge Nicholas Ayoub.
Orthodox Christian tradition is filled with wisdom and guidance about the biblical path of salvation. Yet this guidance remains largely inaccessible to parents and often disconnected from the parenting challenges we face in our home. Parenting Toward the Kingdom, Orthodox Christian Principles of Child Rearing by Philip Mamalakis, Ph.D., will help you make the connections between the spiritual life as we understand it in the Orthodox Church and the ongoing challenges of raising children. It takes the best child development research and connects it with the timeless truths of our Christian faith to offer you real strategies for navigating the challenges of daily life. You can find this book and others like it at store.ancientfaith.com. Again, that is store.ancientfaith.com.
Welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bieletich Davis, and we're here tonight with Judge Nicholas Ayoub, and the suspense is killing me. Will the microphone work? Yes.
Are we back? All right.
Yes, we're back. That's awesome. Good deal. Perfectly timed break right there. But all right. So there you are. You're growing up. You and your brother are playing music together, and you're hearing your friend Terry chant, and you really liked that. So there's like the choir sound, and then there's the chanting, right? And this is like, how would you describe that to in our audience if they're not sure what you mean by the chanting?
So the chanting is monophonic, meaning that there's not harmony. It's either a single voice or multiple voices chanting the single line, accompanied by the drone, by the ison. So it is a little different sound than what we would say in what we're used to in Western music. Which if you're not used to it, it does sound foreign, does give us that mystery. The beauty of it is that it follows melodic patterns that are common amongst all of the pieces. So everything will have some familiarity, and it's designed that way, certainly to highlight the text, most important. But it is a different musical system than someone who's studied Western music would be aware of. I think it was that drew me, at least drew my ear, and then ultimately drew my heart to it. But we had a beautiful priest in Grand Rapids at the time, Father Elias Mitchell, who is still with us, and in fact, he served Divine Liturgy this morning. And he noticed that I was musical and interested in music. And at the Akatha service on Friday nights during Lent, during the chanting of the canon, and this is 12 or 13, he said, come by me at the altar and you chant with me. And that was really the first experience. And when I fell in love with a Byzantine chant, and the services and liturgical tradition, which is kind of, and at the time I didn't think much of it, but it is such a beautiful thing to say to, a young child, come and stand and learn.
But I love that you didn't think it was so strange, right? Because it's like, because I do think this happens in Orthodoxy, right? We invite the kids into the worship, and we invite them into the altar if they're boys and they're serving as acolytes, right? And so there is this very natural way that, like, here, you can come and apprentice as a chanter at my shoulder on weeknight services, and then and there you are. That it is neat that it didn't strike you as an unusual thing for him to be doing. It's actually, I think, maybe doubly beautiful because of that. It's really cool. Yeah. But what a young age to start chanting, and like the old school chanting. That is really, so can you read Byzantine notation and all of that?
Yeah. So, there wasn't a teacher around at that time, and not to date myself, but that's long before the internet, and really that's long before there was a body of recordings, right? The one I had a recording of Metropolitan Philip. It was that he made in the 60s called "Joy of the Soul." It was on cassette. And it was that and a recording from Metropolitan Samuel David made in the 30s. And really that was the only access I had to recordings. And you think about now the amount of recordings that are available at the touch of a button.
Right.
It's pretty exciting. But so then, as a young man and as kind of after I came back from college, the priest at the time said, now it's time to take this serious. And then there were more resources available, and was able to seek out some teachers. And by that time then had a young man, a young deacon at the parish who ultimately became a priest. And he had gone to seminary at Holy Cross, and he read and he taught, and then courses were available through the Antiochian House of Studies. So I went through that and learned. Now I look at, that's not all that long ago, but it is such a different world now. I look at the Trisagion school, the number of schools that will teach you notation. When I started out, you couldn't find anything in Byzantine notation. So it's really that part of it, kind of that renaissance of Byzantine notation, of Byzantine music and Byzantine chant in the church, has been so exciting to watch, especially to see the young people. And these are young people that said, "Yeah, I'm interested in this." You see them at conventions, and then years later, you say, "Wow, you thought you were learning from me. I'm learning from you." They're so far advanced. And it's
That's
amazing.
so neat. That's really cool. Well, it is really beautiful. I mean, there have been over these years, there's a renaissance of interest in Byzantine chant and also in the iconography, right? And like bringing everything kind of back to what that style used to sound like. Although even that is complicated, right? Because I think there used to be very flowery singing in like the Hagia Sophia and the cathedrals, right? And then it was more the monasteries that had the chant. But there's something so peaceful about Byzantine chant. It's so beautiful. But it does have a certain foreign sound, I think, for a lot of Americans, but I think they warm up pretty quickly because it's pretty cool. But all right. So that is like over time, your slow education to become a Psalti. But tell me then, when you went away to college, where'd you go? And were you trying to get far away? And what were you originally thinking you'd study? Were you thinking you wanted to study music at all?
Yeah, I did. I actually went to study music on a music scholarship. And the thing that I struggled with was, for me, music was always the release, right? You have a hard day, you go to the music, and for the first time, music itself was the stressor, right? Music was the work. And I'd struggled with that. And so I've always been interested in politics and government and law. So I ended up kind of taking a different track. I still did some music, but ended up with a philosophy and political science degree, and then decided to go to law school.
Oh, okay.
From there. So.
All right. So were you far from home in college?
No, I was at Western Michigan University, which is in Kalamazoo. It's just about 45 minutes away.
Perfect.
So I was able to come home quite a bit in college.
That is very nice. And so then when you decided to go to law school, was there also a good law school nearby, or what did you do?
Yeah, I was able to go to Michigan State, which is in Lansing, and that's only about an hour away. So I've never been too far from home.
Once you moved to Grand Rapids, that was kind of it. You've stayed within about an hour radius at any given time.
That's about. Great. There's times in the winter when I like to get away, but no. Other than that, can't get too far.
That's neat. That's really neat. Yeah. All right. So you went to law school, and you're picturing. Are you thinking politics? Are you thinking law? Did you think you wanted to be a judge? Like, where did you see that leading?
So at the time, I thought I'd like to be a litigator. I'd like to try cases in front of juries. Kind of having been a performer, I thought, well, that seems to fit. And you can connect. But when it got to law school and you start studying this stuff, and then early on in practice, I realized, oh, actually, no. It's being an advocate all the time and having to be on all the time, even when things don't quite add up. That was a challenge. That was a challenge for me. And what I loved about the law was actually being able to be objective and being able to say, no, this is how it fits together, and this is probably what the outcome should be. So that's how I got into appellate practice, which a lot of appellate practice is working with the trial attorneys and advising them, hey, here's what would happen on appeal. And you kind of have to put the hat on and say, you have to be more of a counselor than an advocate a lot of the times. And that was the part that I enjoyed. Of course, you're still an appellate advocate. And it was those points when I just said, I wish I could be objective all day long. And who gets to do that, or should be doing that anyway, is the judge. And that's, so it was quite a ways into my profession that I said, it's something I'd be interested in doing if the opportunity came along. And then there's some other things that occurred. Being in front of good judges, and then being in front of bad judges was a way to learn. I think if I worked hard, I could do that and could have those qualities that I found important in a good judge. And that was huge. There was a lot. I had a number of role models, right? That were judges. And that's such an important thing, to have somebody that you can look at and visualize yourself or desiring, wanting to aspire to that. That's the beauty of the saints, right? That I always say, oh, if you don't have the saints, how much you're missing. It's like doing things without a role model, right? Without having somebody who can teach you. And so, I've been fortunate enough to have those living saints, and to borrow an expression, of folks that I looked at and said, I'd like to do that.
That's neat.
I think that would make me a better person, and at least put me in a position where I can help other people be better people. And really, it's a funny story, because my wife, actually, she got called to jury duty. And she served on this jury. She absolutely loved it. And the reason is because the judge, he's a fantastic judge, really the best around, a wonderful human being, a wonderful thinker, the biggest heart in the world. And she just fell in love with him. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, he's the best. And she said, the way she, after the trial was over, she said, I think you can work to be like him. And I thought, well, that's a worthy goal. And she said, I think I see you as a judge, and I see you taking on those qualities that he has. And so, I've told him this before, is that's kind of, he's my model for that, right? And I certainly fall short all the time, but I have that model, and that's him. And it was my wife who really saw it.
That's so cool. That's right. And it's nice when someone else is seeing it, right? And it's not just that voice in your head, but it's really someone else going, no, you're right. You could do that. You could be like that. That's cool. So how does one go about becoming a judge? Like, so you're a lawyer. Michigan, how do you make that jump? Because you can't, it's not like a job application.
Right. So there's a couple ways. In Michigan, we use a hybrid system where you can run for office, and that didn't really appeal to me. You have to run a campaign, right? Campaigning is a whole different thing, just like a politician. And I wasn't interested in doing that. But when there are vacancies, then the governor fills the vacancies, and you can go through that process, and there's a big vetting process, and you can, let folks know you're interested. And there's some politics involved, of course, like anything. And so the opportunity did come around, and then I was appointed by the governor to serve in that role at the district court.
That's great. Now, do you ever have to run for re-election?
Yeah, you do. And the way Michigan does it is they kind of protect the incumbency of the judge by designating on the ballot that person is the sitting judge. Mm-hmm. And most people tend to just vote for the incumbent. And it's kind of a balance. So you do have to run. The people do have a chance to say, okay, throw this guy out. Right. But it's not so much that as a judge, you're worried about your next election, because obviously that would be, right. You need to be, judicial independence is so important. So you don't want judges constantly thinking about election when they're deciding cases. So that's the balance that Michigan has used.
Yeah. You don't want judges currying favor with the people. Right. But on the other hand, you do want, if there were an outrage that some judge was just constantly making bad decisions, then it's good that would sort of swell up in public opinion, and that would eventually get them out of office.
Yeah.
So as long as you're not hearing a bunch of rumors that everybody's real angry with you, you're probably okay.
Yeah. Generally, that's how it works. Yes.
All right. Well, tell me, how'd you meet Elizabeth?
So we met at a convention, or a parish life conference. We call them kind of the regional conference in the Antiochian Church. It was here in Grand Rapids. And, I love to tell this story because Grand Rapids is the Christian Reformed. It really is that they have the Christian Reformed Church is headquartered here, and so we have a huge Dutch population, and so and Elizabeth's family is, and actually Elizabeth's family has some connections to Grand Rapids indirectly, and so. Certainly in high school, I dated some Dutch girls, and, my mom would always, jokingly, we have to find you a nice Lebanese girl. And it was always, of course, for us, the conventions and the conference, we have to send you to the conference so you can meet a nice Lebanese girl. And so I went to the conference and I met a lovely Dutch girl. And I love her to death. She is a wonderful person. Her mother, her mom and dad found the church when she was young, so she grew up in the Antiochian Church. And just so happened there she was in Grand Rapids, and we had some mutual friends, and were introduced, and that's that.
Now, did your friends introduce you oh, you're going to like this girl? Or was it just innocent, oh, we're just introducing everyone, or were you a little bit set up by people?
I think it's, there's always that, there's always a little bit, right? Just
whenever you have a single friend, it's always here's a girl you should meet. That's
there
funny.
was a little bit of that, certainly.
And she is beautiful. Elizabeth, Elizabeth's a beautiful person inside as well, but she's also just happens to be like just stunningly gorgeous. So you really just, wow, what a beautiful person you found to just fall in love with you and marry you. That's fantastic. Congratulations,
Very blessed.
truly, because she's awesome. She is really awesome. But so what did you guys do? Like, did you just, she wasn't local. She had connections to Grand Rapids, but she wasn't local. So how did you guys handle that? Did you date long distance for a while?
So now I had a Facebook account at the time, but I didn't know how to use it. In fact, I had to call my brother and, what do you do? So I did find her on Facebook, which was kind of a newer thing at the time. And we did some communication there. And then we, graduated to texting, which at the time she had a phone with just the numbers on it. So, you have to, if you remember the old ones, you press it 3 times to get the C.
Yeah.
And we were texting like
People
that.
would text me and I was like, do not do that. There's no way I have the time to answer that message.
And then, you gradually, and then you talk. And then I went out to visit for a long weekend. And she was kind of, she had just graduated from college, and she studied psychology and then was certified as a child life specialist, which is a really neat job. And I'm sure she talked a little bit about that when you talked to her. And that's one of those things. Those jobs aren't readily available, and it just so happens that there was a hospital in Grand Rapids that was looking for a child life specialist. So she applied. We had met, but we certainly weren't, talking at the time she applied. And then it fell into place. Next thing you know, when I went to go out there for the long weekend, she had her interview that next week. So she said, "Hey, I'm actually interviewing in Grand Rapids that next week." And then it wasn't too long after that she ended up moving to Grand Rapids. So I always say, oh yeah, she moved to Grand Rapids for me, but it's actually not true.
Not really. She was moving to Grand Rapids, but it was nice because there was also this nice guy she knew, right?
There you go. Yes.
Yeah. But so how long was it before you guys got married? And then how long before you had your daughter?
So we got married about 2 years after that. And then, and boy, I want to say we were married for 7 years before we had our daughter. We struggled quite a bit with infertility. And then we were finally blessed with Josephine through a lot of prayers along the way. Yes.
Sometimes that's how it is, and I do find that parents in that position just are so grateful, and so I think maybe you're better at recognizing what a gift a child is sometimes, and that's a beautiful thing too. It's just God does things in all the different ways for sure. But so by the time you guys were married, where you weren't a judge, because Elizabeth would then suggest later that you could become a judge.
Right.
Where along that path did you become a judge?
It was right after, Josephine was 2. So the process started right around the time Josephine was born, and then finally the appointment took place about 2 years after that.
Wow, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's really neat. So as you guys are raising her in Grand Rapids there, do you have a lot of family around? Does she get to know all of her cousins and everybody?
We don't.
No.
My father passed when I was still in law school. He was diagnosed with lung cancer when I was in college, and passed quite young. And then my mother passed. Thank you. My mom passed in 2018.
Okay.
So she finally got to have a grandchild.
Oh, good. She got to meet her. So that's
yes.
neat. That's really neat. So your brother doesn't have kids?
No.
I mean, he's a rock star musician. What are you going to do, right? It's just
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, good. I'm glad that she was able to hold her and to know her a little
Yes,
bit. Thank God. That's beautiful. I'm sure she was very joyful about all of it for
absolutely.
you. Ah,
Absolutely.
thank God. Thank God.
Yes.
But so your dad's family never came out from Lebanon and your mom's family was in Peoria.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. And
So
then
my,
Elizabeth's family's not there either. Okay. Well, so then you've got the
yeah.
church though. And the
Yes,
church
absolutely.
becomes and I find that for those of us where the extended family, my extended family's across the country, so it's like the church becomes that, and the kids that my kids grow up with are like cousins, and they're,
Right.
and it's funny because somebody will say, well, maybe you'll marry one of these kids, and they're like, those kids are like my brothers,
Yeah.
I'm not going to marry them, that's gross,
Right.
but
No, it
is
is.
that
And
what
they're,
you're finding?
yes, they're all aunts and uncles. And, we say aunt and uncle. And it's funny because, I'll have to change this, we'll lose someone at the parish and, have the funeral, and I'll have to go to my colleagues and see if I can get coverage so that I can attend the funeral. And I say, yeah, my aunt passed away. And then they said, how many aunts,
Right.
how many uncles you have all these aunts and uncles dying. And then one of them picked up and said, are these church aunts and church uncles? I said, yeah, but they're, they're no less important to me.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
That's the family, right? Yeah.
That is beautiful. Well, and for you, I mean, you can show up and you can chant at their services. So that's
Yeah.
really an extra gift that you're able to have, or that I know priests are able to have, where they can serve for someone that they loved, and
Yeah.
that is really special. That's really neat.
It's very meaningful for me, certainly. Yes.
Gosh,
Yes.
that's cool. So your brother though, he kind of took off right after college. When did he go? Were you still pretty
Yeah.
young when he started moving and just coming
Yeah.
back to visit occasionally?
Yeah. I think I just graduated from law school, and he, after he graduated college, spent a couple years. And that was at the time my dad passed. So, he stayed with my mom a couple years, but he knew what he wanted to do, and certainly at that time, you couldn't do what he wanted to do in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You had to go to L.A., and so he packed up the car, and he did some good. He laid a good groundwork and good foundation, but he really packed up the car, landed in LA, and said, "World, here I am." And he got some really, really awesome breaks early on, and it's because of who he is, and it's because of his heart, and um,
How
you know,
lovely.
anyone can see it. So
Oh, that's neat. And that is a beautiful thing, though, right? I think it was Elder Porphyrios talked about how he said, I'm not a very attractive man, but the more I pray and the more God fills me, the more attractive I get. And people just are like called to me, and they all want to come up and talk to me, and they all love me, even though I have this ugly face, which I'm not sure he really had such an ugly face, but I see what he means, right? That there's something about that beauty shining from within. Now, when your brother went to go be a musician, was there some part of you going like, what am I doing being a lawyer when I could go, maybe I should be doing that?
yeah, I don't know. It's certainly that, yeah, there was part of me that wished I could do it. Um, but there's the other part saying, no, no, you don't have that kind of talent. You don't. And then there's a lot of unknown.
Yeah.
You have to jump in, and that was a little bit harder for me than it
Yeah.
is for my brother. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a big deal. Well, and it's also a whole lifestyle too. I mean, it always sounds like a great idea to be a very successful musician and stuff, but it's like, well, you've got a beautiful wife and a little girl, right? Like,
yeah,
how does all that work out
right.
when you're doing something like that? So, things work out how they're supposed to work out, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm curious though. So, how did you just sort of always know other musicians? Like, I guess you didn't have to move to town. So you weren't like, I'm a judge in search of a band to play with, because that would just seems like it would be
Right.
harder to do. But had you just kind of always had this group of friends and you play together, or is it like a
Yep.
different band every couple of years, or how has it been?
No, It's really exactly that. All of the most of the folks that I still play music with, we played music in high school and through college. It just becomes a big circle. Yeah,
How nice, like a family as
yeah,
well. So you have a lot of surrogate families around
that's
you.
right. In
Yeah.
fact, that's the band name is the family. So
Oh, really?
and we
I
did
didn't
that
even know
because
that.
yeah, we had to. We'd have somebody else playing bass or somebody else playing drums. It's not the same personnel all the time. So we said, well, it's just a big family. We'll sub in members of
I
the
love that.
family.
I love that. Whichever cousins are around are going to come jump
That's
up
right.
on stage. And that's
Yes.
great. So, where do you guys play?
These days we'll do like cocktail hours for weddings, a lot of that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Um, we'll play, we'll play a restaurant or a deck every once in a while, and then on my own I do a lot of dueling piano bars and piano bars where people sit around the piano bar and request songs.
Wait, so is a dueling piano bar really two piano players?
Yeah, two piano players, they go back and forth, take requests,
Oh, that's fun.
just kind of keep the thing going and
Oh, that's
bounce
kind of
off each
neat.
other. Yeah.
It's not really a battle. It's more just a
No.
partnership. Okay. Just
Yes. Yeah.
checking.
It's
Like
keep
I
the
can't
show
quite
going. Yeah.
picture what that's like. But no, that's really neat. So you do piano bars and you play and
Yeah.
sing.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
cool. And you've
Yep.
described it in your bio as pop jazz. What's pop jazz?
Pop jazz is so I would call it the Great American Songbook, like the Cole Porter songs and
Nice.
Gershwin songs, but very um, uh, vocal focused. Think about Tony Bennett and kind of the it's jazz songs, but it's popular singing and much more accessible than straight ahead jazz. And then we'll take some pop
Absolutely.
songs so it's a piano trio, piano, bass, and drums, and lends itself to that kind of sound.
Oh,
That's the
that's
pop
neat.
jazz.
Yeah, I'm going to have to work out a way to be in Grand Rapids when you're playing sometime because
No, we'd love to have you.
that sounds fantastic. If somebody's listening and they are in Grand Rapids, where do they go to hear you? Like, where do you
During the
play?
summers, I spend a lot of time at the Annex Piano Bar in Saugatuck, which
Ah,
is actually owned longtime Greek family. Saugatuck's about 45 minutes away.
it's
Um,
by the lake, right? It's on the
it
shore.
is. It is
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful little town. Um, and yeah, I've been playing that room for 20 years. It doesn't
Cool.
make any sense. It's an ice cream bar during the day and a coffee shop, and then there's this piano bar inside. There's no air conditioning. They open all the doors and people just come in to hang out and in 80-degree, 90-degree room and do sing-alongs. So it's
I love that.
it's out of a different era, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really neat. I was in Michigan a couple of years ago and it was like 78 degrees or something. And this tour guide looks at us and she goes, "I'm sorry if I don't make any sense. I really can't even think when it's this hot." And we were cracking up because we're from Texas and we were wearing jackets because it was so
Right.
cold to us. But
Right.
so I could hear that, right? Like in an 80-degree room, it's just so warm. But yeah, no, that's really cool though. That sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds really neat. Now, are you happy with where you are career-wise? Like as a judge, do judges move up? Like, do you want to be like a state Supreme Court judge? Are you kind of enjoying what you do? What do you think?
That's an interesting question. I do. I love legal research and I love the difficult legal questions and really I love to be alone and just be alone with the legal books and study the issues and write. And that's not what district court is. District court's it's the lower level court, so it's a lot of smaller crimes and smaller civil suits. But one thing that I've really grown into is this ability and love to connect with the folks that are there. A lot of folks are there not because they're criminals, not because their hearts are dark or that they intended to do bad things, but they're struggling. There's a lot of so much of the issues are are based on poverty, and based on circumstances. And you get to meet a whole lot of beautiful people that the world doesn't always see as beautiful, right? A lot of strong people that have endured a lot. And one of the things that I'm able to do in that court is kind of turn the system around a little bit and say, okay, you're charged with a crime, but it's not an offense to somebody. It's not an offense to society. You're struggling. More than anything, you just need some help. You need some treatment. So much substance abuse and substance use disorder is at the heart of so many of the cases that come into court. And so we have what we call a sobriety court. And we get to really know a core group of people, walk with them through some treatment that we're able to provide with grants, and then see folks come out on the other side. And it's such a rewarding thing. I got to tell you, I mean, I've got an internal conflict because I would jump at the opportunity to sit on an appellate court, but I would hold tight to what we have, and you'd have to drag me away from that side of things and that ability to use the justice system in a way that truly is constructive and helpful and provides treatment to a lot of folks.
Wow.
That has been so rewarding. And that's one of those things where I say, yep, I'm here. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm here. And I get that confirmation
that's beautiful
quite often and say that this is why I'm here. And I
that is
can't
wonderful.
go anywhere else right now. So.
Yeah, I can believe it. It will be hard to tear yourself away someday. So I hope you're able to be there for a while because it's beautiful. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. I've really enjoyed getting to know you.
Same here. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience for joining us. And please come back after Pascha and we'll meet another Everyday Orthodox Christian. Good night, everybody.